ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Saturday morning edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. And as always, anyway, I'd like to think that we have the most amazing guests talking about the most amazing topics. We'll be looking at a sari for change. Sari as in the cloth that you drape around your body. So sari for change with Rayana Edwards. We're also going to be talking the Ruqya, science of Ruqya, or the Ruqya concept, with Sheikh Ben Halima. He toured South Africa doing a lot of healing all around the country, and he will be in to give us an overview of his healing tour. But first up, we're going to talk something very close to my heart, and that is midlife crisis and empty nest syndrome, with a second-time guest on our show, the gorgeous Louisa Niehaus. She's a psychotherapist, and she's here to talk about midlife crisis and also empty nest syndrome. And she's dressed for the occasion. She lived for a couple of months in Dubai, and she made sure she's come back with a beautiful abaya which she's wearing, including a lovely scarf. So let's welcome her very warmly to the show this morning. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your lovely introduction. I love being here.
Lovely to have you here once again. And today, of course, as a psychotherapist, obviously, with your specialization is in trauma therapy.
Correct.
We will talk about it in another program. But today we're going to talk midlife crisis, and we're also going to talk, obviously, empty nest syndrome. Let me start right at the beginning by asking, women who are in menopause, their menopausal years, would that not be the same as being going through midlife crisis, or are they two totally different events in a woman's life?
They can be coincidental. The thing about midlife crisis for women is that it's characterized by the menopause, whereas for men it's not characterized by a physiological change.
Mm-hmm. So men too go through midlife crisis.
Yes.
When they go through a very naughty period in their lives, or most of them do anyway, their behavior becomes very risky, am I right?
Sometimes what happens to men is that they seem to need to find a lost youth or to reassert their masculinity. That's what often happens to men. It's a stereotype. Whereas for women, there's a real emptiness that happens around
with midlife crisis.
Yeah. Whereas for men, we most often associate midlife with men because of the type of behavior you've just described. It seems to be more overt. Yet with women, it's not as obvious, yet it's still very, very prevalent.
So we as women, as always, continue suffering in silence.
I think because there's a lot more literature and a lot more focus on women's issues, midlife is one of the areas where women can, when they're armed with knowledge, work through this in a wonderful way. Because for me, midlife is a second chance at a different life. Because you're not the same as you were for the first 30, 40 years of your life. You've matured, you've grown, yet you may never have had the opportunity to look back and reassess your dreams, reassess your aspirations, reassess what you want now as a 40, 50, 60-year-old adult compared to what your aspirations were as a 20-year-old. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the turning point in midlife. I like to see midlife as a transition, not as a crisis, because you can move into transition and you can make the most wonderful life given your maturity, your insight and the wisdom that you've gained at this age.
I can't agree with you more. I often think to myself that I wish I knew then, in my 20s or 30s, what I know now.
Exactly.
I never would have made all of those stupid mistakes or said those stupid things. But be that as it may, experience is the greatest of teachers, is it not?
Yes.
Early on, I asked the question if midlife crisis and the menopause is similar or the same. You have responded. So we're going to talk empty nest syndrome after the break. But let's look at midlife crisis and empty nest syndrome. Also two totally different conditions?
No,
Or periods in your life?
They seem to be correlated.
Okay.
So often, a midlife crisis can be triggered by empty nest syndrome, because it would happen at an age continuum where one is aware that you are in a different life cycle.
Absolutely. And it can be frightening if you're not prepared for it.
Totally frightening.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a medical condition. I would be correct in thinking that.
No.
This midlife crisis and empty nest syndrome are not medical conditions.
No.
So it doesn't, I should hope, doesn't manifest in a probably physiological manner in any way?
No. I think, look, there might be other associated things such as low mood, sadness, but it's not that it is a disorder as such.
Or an illness or a medical condition?
No. And that's what's so wonderful about it, is that you can work through it.
Okay. How different is midlife crisis between men and women? And typically, at what stage does it start setting in?
That's a very interesting question, because when I've canvassed people about how they perceive, or at what age they perceive midlife to manifest, it varies. And it varies according to the experiences that you've had in life. If someone has had a very full life and experienced a lot of things, they may experience midlife sooner, because they've fitted so much into their life that they're at a point thinking, what next? What's there left for me? And that may manifest younger, maybe 40s. For some people, midlife manifests at 50, 60. So it's not really at the middle of your life, like 50, because we don't live to 100, or some of us may.
Okay.
So it varies. For some people, it can be, I've had a client come to me in their late 30s, presenting with midlife symptoms.
And what would those symptoms be? And we touched on the fact that it is different for men in certain, I can't make a generalization, but with some men, they do indulge in risky behavior. But typically, let's look at the woman, and then let's look at the man. And how what are the signs and symptoms to look out for?
Signs and symptoms that cover both genders would be a feeling of, is this all there is to life?
Ooh.
Which is a common thought that I see in my practice, where men and women both say, but what's left?
Does that then also suggest, perhaps, if not maybe treated or counseled, that they could become pretty depressed?
Yes, definitely. They often come to me depressed, saying, I don't know what else there is. Is this the sum of my life? I had so many different dreams, and this is where I am now. And that's a catalyst for change in both men and women, where one can integrate things such as new hobbies, new interests. And that's what I said to you when I spoke about earlier. I spoke about, we never reassess where we are now as mature adults compared to where we were in our 20s. It's normal for young adults to plot their life. I'm going to go to university, I'm going to set up a business, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But at midlife, you kind of just slide into your aspirations and dreams. And when you've reached them, very few people stop to say, well, perhaps I should get some new dreams and aspirations for where I am now. So consequently, people feel dead-ended. They feel, is this all there is? Maybe their marriage is boring. Maybe they haven't traveled enough. Maybe their job is not exciting. And that's when it can be very, very upsetting for adults at midlife. And they feel terribly guilty that they're feeling this way, because mature adults feel they should know better.
and should have done more and seized more opportunities. So at this point, I should imagine it's also normal for some people going through midlife crisis to feel terribly let down, terribly unfulfilled, feel like they've disappointed themselves and the people around them. I should have done more. I should have been a better mom. I should have been a better partner, etc., etc. And all of those feelings can weigh you down. We're talking all negativity because that's what midlife crisis is about. You're going through a whole gamut of negative emotions. How do you kind of counsel them back onto a very positive footing and also show them that there's so much more to life? I should imagine some people also start thinking, is this the end of my life? Am I going to pass on in the next few years? And that must be very frightening.
And it's true, exactly what you've said. Midlife is characterized by how much time have I got left? And there's a lot of things I wished I would have done. There is still the most wonderful opportunity for one to do everything you want to do. And that's the positive spin that I give to midlife, is that you have so much more wisdom at this point in your life. And you can do so much if you align yourself with where you want to be. It's different if you're still thinking as a 20-year-old, I should have these aspirations, those goals, etc. They're very different at midlife. And it's the most wonderful maturation and flowering that you can have.
Often when a couple go through midlife crisis, the marriage is very, very troubled. There's issues around, like I've suggested, the man trying to hold on to his youth, which is slipping away, and possibly the woman's feeling the same way. And the marriage is, the marriage starts crumbling. How do you address those issues? And I'm sure it's very different for the man and the woman. But let's look at that right after the ad break. I'm talking to Louisa Niehaus. We're talking midlife crisis. When we come back, we're also going to touch on emptiness syndrome and just how you can navigate your life around all of these issues. In studio with me is a psychoanalyst or psychotherapist, Louisa Niehaus. We're talking midlife crisis, and we're also going to touch on emptiness syndrome. Louisa, just before the ad break, I spoke about troubled marriages. You'd often find the man or the woman accusing or pointing fingers at each other, saying, well, the kids are now grown up and they're out of the house, and I've had enough of you. I tolerated you all of this time simply because of the kids. And they either part ways or they need to do something to save this marriage.
It's a very common event at midlife, is that a couple have been together for X number of years, they've had children. Without the children in the house, they look at each other and there's no other distractions, and unfortunately they have maybe outgrown each other, become bored with each other, taken each other for granted. And it's very sad because they've shared so much history together. It could be the case that people do outgrow one another, and that's why I strongly encourage couples to have activities and interests.
Joint activities.
That they share. And midlife is a great opportunity to find new opportunities and new interests that they can do together as mature adults that do the things they never had the opportunity to do when they were younger, maybe because of financial reasons or maybe because of having had children. But the couple is now free to explore all sorts of interests together, but they need to have a connection. It needs to be rebuilt.
Worked on,
and
hard
reforged,
work.
of course.
What about, I've been alluding throughout the interview about the errant male, the man going through midlife crisis, and he's just so desperately holding on to his lost youth, goes out and has a whole host of flings, but the woman still believes that, if they worked at it, they can save the marriage. How do they move forward on this issue, or does that marriage just kind of crumble apart?
I think it depends on the partners. And I'm really glad that you've raised that, because it is it is very prevalent. Men seem to feel that that they may be losing their masculinity. And, mothers are often heavily invested in bringing up children. So then there's not a lot of focus sometimes on the marriage when one's got so many different responsibilities. I'm being archetypal here, but I mean a lot of husbands spend a lot of time building up their career, looking out for the family, and couples drift apart in their various roles and duties. You've got to be able to come back together and re-establish that marriage based on the familiarity and history that you've got together. If it comes to the point where you have both outgrown each other, you've outgrown each other.
Unfortunately.
And both of you have to have a willingness to work at this. And to remember, there's history there. And history is not something that can be replicated with a new partner.
Familiarity breeds contempt. We know the old saying, and we know that you've lived with someone for a long time. You know the person's scars and all. And in certain instances, you kind of ask yourself, what was I thinking marrying this person? He or she is a horrid person. But again, there's history, there's children. Would midlife be perhaps the opportunity then to part ways if nothing can be salvaged?
Look, it's a catalyst.
Or perhaps to mend your ways?
It's a catalyst. You see, midlife, that's when it becomes a crisis, because all these issues come to the fore and you cannot ignore them anymore. They present so clearly. And this is the opportunity that some people are afraid to take. Do I stay or do I go? Do I work at this or don't I? And it
Big
comes
decision.
to a crux at midlife. And fortunately, one is a mature adult, and you do have the mental capacity to work through this, which is different to being presented with these things in your 20s or 30s.
What happens if a woman or a man or the couple find themselves in a situation? I should imagine that's quite a lethal situation. The woman is going through menopause, plus they both hit with midlife crisis and empty nest syndrome. The kids are grown up, they're either marrying or at university. So you're contending with three major life-changing issues.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's why this is so difficult. So the first point of reference would be awareness. And hopefully through programs like yours, this kind of awareness comes to people where they have to say, perhaps I'm going through menopause, I have the signs of menopause. Maybe I am experiencing empty life, and maybe my marriage is in crisis at midlife, because people don't automatically think these things through. They just feel, oh, I'm stuck in a mess, everything feels terrible. But maybe once you have an awareness of what's happening with you, to understand it, and then to communicate with your partner, to say, I think this is what we may be experiencing. That can diffuse an enormous amount of tension. Instead of blaming, or instead of making accusations, own what you're going through. Discuss it with your partner, see where they're at, see if they're open to discussing it, and then there's a path through.
So you have to take responsibility for where you're at.
Yeah.
It's nobody's fault. It is the decisions and the choices you've made in life that has brought you to that point. So no good pointing fingers at each other at this point in life. You need to work on mending the relationship rather than going at each other's throats. So what does empty nest syndrome look like? Can you prepare for these events in your life?
Oh, it's such a devastating period for women and for men, because you've spent your entire life, if you have children, focused around the children, their needs, their interests, their schooling, their welfare, and all of a sudden the children up and leave and you're abandoned. And it is truly empty. People become very depressed, very sad. They wonder what meaning their life has. What is their purpose? What are they going to do? People haven't adequately prepared for life once the children have left home. And that leaves a huge gap.
Because as parents, our entire early lives as parents revolves around our children, their wants, their needs, and we express all of this. We're expressing our love through, acceding to all of their wants and needs, and we want the perfect children to grow up in a perfect world. And once that phase of your life is over, I should imagine you feel terribly empty.
Hugely. And some parents experience the children as abandoning them.
Oh,
I've done so much for you, I'm here for you, and you're leaving. It could be that some parents feel resentful because they know they have a difficult marriage or a difficult relationship, and the children may be acting as a buffer or a distraction to stop the spouses looking at one another and seeing that their relationship may be in crisis. So that's an added factor as well.
what about, let's assume you have a problem child, or children, 1 or 2 children, they grow up, they are now young adults, but you know that they make very poor choices in their lives. And they want to leave home and live on their own because they believe they've now grown up. But in your heart, you believe that they might just make all the wrong choices and get into a lot of trouble. What do you say or do to them? Because clearly they want to move on with their lives, whether they're going to make the right or the wrong choices going forward. But you are worried out of your mind that they're going to get into a lot of trouble or not make it out on their own.
And that's the difficult part of letting the little birds fly out of the nest because they have to make their way in the world. As protective a parent as one wants to be, I think the most important thing is to be there at the end of the day when they do come up against difficult experiences and be there for them. But the only way that children are going to learn when they're young adults is to make their way out in the world and to have a supportive parental network.
So you are now going through midlife crisis and possibly even empty nest syndrome. Are there discussions that you have with your spouse and your children? Do you express the difficulty or the sadness that you're experiencing? Or do you just martyr on and go and see a counselor and try and deal with your issues? Because oftentimes people are very, don't have empathy, you know, they kind of say, you're a strong woman, get over it, you know, pull yourself together.
Julie, midlife is not often spoken about, and that's why it's been my area of interest. Because adults are supposed to just get it right, get on with their lives, do it perfectly. And as old as we are or as wise as we are, we don't always get it right, and we do make mistakes. And we do suffer sadness and depression. We're not perfect. So I would suggest to anybody who is experiencing midlife and a midlife crisis to understand more about it, to read more about it. I do have a blog and a website. They can read some more information about it, louisaniehaus.com. And to familiarize yourself with what midlife is about. See what symptoms you're experiencing, and then maybe discuss it with your partner initially to say, I think I'm going through this. I think this is what's happening to me. I need your help.
And there's no silver bullet to take, a magic pill or anything that's going to make it go away. If you find that you're really very sad, possibly into depression, both with midlife crisis and empty nest syndrome, the best advice I presume you would give is go and see a counselor.
Definitely, definitely. Go and see someone, talk it through, especially if your partner is not supportive or if you don't have a good family network or a friend network to discuss this with.
With half a minute to wrap up, what do you want to leave us with?
I want to leave you with the fact that midlife can be the most amazing transition. It can be the best part of your life.
So embrace it wholeheartedly.
Totally, because you don't have all the angst of your youth.
Right, there you go. Thank you indeed for being with us and sharing such valuable insights.
Thank you.
That was the lovely Louise Niehaus. She's a psychotherapist talking to us about midlife crisis and empty nest syndrome. Don't go away. We're now going to talk about Rukia, and thereafter we're going to be talking about the Sari Foundation. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back, and I've been looking forward to this interview. I've always heard about the science of ruqya or ruqya healing, and we have the eminent Sheikh Ben Halima from Tunisia. He's touring the country currently, and he's here in studio to talk about ruqya with us. So please join us, because I do believe you're going to be quite interested in this part of the discussion. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I've heard of ruqya in the past, and people often mistake it for things like perhaps black magic, fortune telling, witchcraft, etc. As Muslims, how do we view ruqya healing, and how do we know we're going to the right person to help us heal through some form of difficulty in our lives?
So ruqya essentially is Quranic healing, using Quran to remove magic, jinn, evil eye, spiritual problems from a person. While Quran, it also involves some sunnah elements like water, oil, herbs, hijama, dua, but it has to be in the boundaries of Islam. So that is what makes it an Islamic thing. It is Quran, but Quran also involves other elements from the sunnah. Now, when we see things that are not Islamic, like fortune telling, like sacrifices for jinn, looking for black sheep or red chicken, that Islam never asked to, calling names that are not known in Islam, other things, so that's when you know it's not Islamic. Now, if there are parts of it that are secret, that are weird, it is better to ask for clarification, because you can go into wrong things. And we want this field to be put under the control of ulama. When Rasulullah ﷺ arrived in Medina, the people who used to make ruqya before Islam, so it was before Islam, and ruqya actually means healing with words. Now, when Islam came, the Quran replaced the other words, but it was before Islam. And they asked Rasulullah ﷺ, we used to make ruqya before Islam, can we continue? He said, recite me your ruqya. There's no harm in doing it as long as there is no shirk. So that is the pre-Islamic ruqya that were put under the control of Rasulullah ﷺ. So this, we want this to be done for the protection of all Muslims.
So let's assume people are going through hardship in their families, in their homes, in their business, or whatever, their relationships are breaking down. Is it about them working on the relationship and also go to someone like yourself, a ruqya healer, to assist in the process? Or if they truly apply their minds to the relationship, to work on the relationship, that it can and it will work?
Actually, jinn and magic problems provoke unusual situations in the life that you cannot understand and you cannot handle normally. For example, when magic is done on a couple, they will be fighting over nothing, over useless things. And whenever they separate, they regret and they love each other. But when they come back, they start again. So they cannot work it out just by intelligence. Now, if you are intelligent enough to understand that something is wrong is happening, so what you will do, whenever a discussion starts, you'll just walk away or just keep quiet to not let it get worse. But that will not remove the problem. So when it is a problem of magic, it has to be treated with ruqya, with Quran. Now, you can go to someone for treatment. You can also treat yourself with Quran. But you have to remove it with Quran. Anyway, you have to treat it. You cannot go over it just by your own will.
I'm thinking also, how will I know, for example, let's assume my marriage is very, very troubled. We fight all the time. There's no peace in the home. There's just this feeling of heaviness in the home all the time. How will I know that it's possibly someone that's made nafs, or, like you say, magic, or cast a spell on our home? How will I know that, number one? And number two, would ruqya heal us and heal our home? And also, would I be told in the process of the healing, who is it that means to do me harm?
So how to know that you have a spiritual problem? There are 4 symptoms that Allah Ta'ala gives us in Quran. The first one is blockages in life. You can't get a job, your money does not stay, you can't get married, you can't have children, you can't study. Everything you try to do to arrange your situation is not working. So anyone can have a problem in life, can lose a job, go through divorce or have an accident. But when the problem is unusual and repeated systematically to a point you cannot believe that this is bad luck, because it is an invisible force blocking your life. So this is what Allah Ta'ala said, النفاثات في العقد, means they attach your life with magic. The second symptom is unusual health problems. You have pains that never end. You have unusual illnesses. When you go to doctors, they don't understand, because what you are describing does not match with any known illness. And they will send you to do analysis to understand what's happening in your body. They find nothing. And the third symptom is unusual mental states, anger, as we said in the couple, or depression for no reason, or fears, or forgetting, or hallucinations, hearing voices, addiction that go out of control. It can go up to madness. And the fourth symptom is bad dreams. So you'll be seeing in your dreams people attacking you, snake, dog, bull, water, climbing, falling, dead people, accidents, unusual sexual dreams. So that is how you know. The common point of these four symptoms is that it's something unusual that you cannot understand normally and you cannot handle normally. Whatever you try to do to remove it, it's not working. So that's how you know you have a jinn and magic problem. Now the second question, will Ruqya remove it? Well, it's like medicine. Medicine removes illnesses, but it's not 100%. Sometimes some things are not, but mostly it will help. You see, that's how Ruqya is. Mostly it will help. Now, you cannot expect it to be 100%. Sometimes you'll need to repeat the treatment many times. And also, Ruqya is an evaluating science like medicine. So some cases, we can still be looking for solutions for those cases. But definitely it will help. Now, the third question is, will we tell you who is doing the magic? Well, that is a mistake. It should never be said, because there's no way in Islam to know who it is. If the jinn speaks out saying that is the person who sent me, it could be true, it could be wrong. So we cannot trust them for this information. If you see the person in the dream, it could be him, it could also not be him, it could be a trick to create problems. Now, if the person says that I have kashf, Allah, I made istikhara, Allah is showing me, that is an information that you have to keep to yourself, because that does not allow you to accuse people. I mean, if the matter was to be brought in an Islamic court, you'll be accused of false accusation. You cannot justify what you have said.
Okay, let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we'll talk some more on the science of Ruqya. I'm talking to Sheikh Ben Halima. He's here on tour of South Africa. We're talking about, obviously, the science of healing through Ruqya. We do hope you're finding this interview interesting. I'm quite blown away by it. I think a lot of us kind of dismiss the issues around nazar, nafs, etc. But here is Sheikh talking to us about healing through the Holy Quran, inshallah. Don't go away. We will continue this discussion right after the ad break. Welcome back. I'm talking to Sheikh Ben Halima. He is from Tunisia. He's on tour in our country, and he is on tour for, obviously, Ruqya healing. Sheikh, back to you. And just before we get back to the heart of the matter on the interview, tell us a little bit about your tour around South Africa.
Alhamdulillah, it's been 2 months already. We started by Cape Town. We went all around the coast through Port Elizabeth up to Durban, and back to other cities, Stanger, Port Shepstone, and others, and now in Joburg. We still have a few days for for Pretoria and Durban, and then we continue to Zambia and Zimbabwe and Malawi, all these countries, inshallah. We'll be back in Joburg, inshallah, 1 week before Ramadan.
Inshallah. So people who would like to consult with you would be able to get through to you via Yusuf Ibrahim, I presume.
Yes, indeed. And mostly our campaign is to train people. So all those who want to learn, the training is free, open to everyone. We wish to train people to establish permanent centers everywhere.
Can women form Ruqya, and can I be taught to help heal people?
Yes, we train women. We need women at least to do the cupping for the women. Mostly the women assist the men in the ruqya. But we also have centers that are only run by women, where women treat women without any men involving. So we are very happy. It just depends how courageous the lady is to go through all of the process.
Are there any criteria involved as far as becoming a healer, ruqya healer? I'm wondering about understanding of Quran, perhaps speaking and understanding the Arabic language. So what would the criteria be, or would it just be a clean heart and wanting to help people?
Well, the minimum is to be able to read Quran. Now, if you cannot read Quran in Arabic, it will be difficult. But if you have the will, you can keep learning however you can until you can learn the verses. That is the minimum. Now, when you come for training, it's not necessarily that you're going to become a professional healer or heal others. You can learn for your own information. You can learn to treat yourself, your family. So all that does not involve any risks. And so after that, if you feel that you can help others, of course, it will be good. Now, your motivation has to be to help people for the sake of Allah Ta'ala, to help the people who suffer, and also to help their faith so they do not go in shirk. It is a rahmah for people that you cannot do this work with the motivation of money, for example, because Allah's help will not be with you and those shayateen are going to attack you. So you cannot make it. You cannot stand in the middle of Allah and shaitan.
What are the risks? You talk about risks. What would they be?
The risks is that when you treat people, the jinns of people are going to attack you and attack your family. But that's not a big thing. And also the magicians that you are breaking their work and healing their victims, they will eventually also attack you. But just to make it short that we are attacked permanently, it is normal, as if you see a policeman is in robbers or criminals can attack him, or fireman, he can also get burnt. But we are attacked. But when we see our patients every day, they suffer much more than us. And yet they did not do ruqya to anyone. It's just their personal issues. So those attacks can always be handled, So the only thing is that you have to be with Allah, do it for Allah Ta'ala, and you will learn how to handle all these things.
How long does it take to learn to become a ruqya healer?
Well, to help your own self, it will take about between 3 days and a week, according to how much you know already of Quran and how much you are speedy in your learning. Now you can start off like that, but then you will need some time of practice and another week or two of learning to become a professional raqi.
Can you self-heal through ruqya?
Yeah.
I may have a troubled life, or I have an illness, or I just believe nothing goes right in my life. Am I able to self-heal?
Yes, everybody can treat his own self, and as a raqi you can treat your own self. So to treat your own self, you have to read Quran on water and use the water to drink, to bath, and to spray your house and workplace. That is a very simple and essential information. Because, for example, people suffer, yet they make salat and they read Quran and they can be reading Manzil and Baqarah every day for years, and the problem is not going. Because the way to make the Quran a remedy is to read it on the water, whatever you read. Now, there are basic fundamental verses in Ruqya that are Surah Fatiha, Ayat al-Kursi, Ikhlas, Falaq, Nas, and 3 special verses to remove the magic. It is the verses of Musa alayhi salam with the magicians of Fir'aun, where Allah says that Allah destroys the sihr by His words. Surah A'raf 117 to 122, Surah Yunus 81-82, and Surah Taha 68 to 70. Those are the fundamental verses. Anyway, they are all in Manzil. So you read for about 20 minutes at least on the water. You're going to drink and bath with the water, spray your house. Now that water is going to fall on the magic and jinn like water on fire to turn it off. So if you just do that, you keep on doing that all the time. It's not all about ruqya, but it's like washing with pure water. So even if you are very dirty, at least the water will remove quite a bit of your dirt. And if you keep on washing with the water, eventually it will be finished. So that is already a good point to do.
Earlier on too, you spoke about people with mental illnesses, people with illnesses, dreaded disease, etc. What about addicts? Those are choices they make. They choose to drink alcohol or use hard drugs. Can you perform ruqya on them, and inshallah, can they be healed or get onto the path of healing?
Yes, well, the ruqya will definitely help, because when you are into addiction, anything that is haram, of course, that brings jinns to you, because if you just drink a glass of water without saying Bismillah, that will bring the shayateen to participate. And the more you do it, the more it gives them strength and control of your life. So it becomes an addiction. Of course, there's also the addictive part of the drugs, if it is drugs. So that will help. And many of these people that are in drugs, or even in prisons, because we go to prisons with chaplains, they have magic problems, and that is pushing them there. And they try and they want to get out and they cannot. So the ruqya will really help, inshallah. Yet the person needs also to have the will to quit, because if the person wants to do it, so we cannot stop him doing it.
Mm-hmm. In terms of confidence, let's assume you come to my home to come and perform ruqya on the family and the home. I may be very confident and very invested in the ruqya concept, and I believe and trust that, you know, through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are going to bring goodness into my home through this process. But what about other family members who do not embrace the concept, even though we're all together in the house, in the room, whilst you're doing the ruqya, and they don't embrace the concept? Is it going to work?
It is going to work. That has a little impact, because for example, if you have eaten magic, the magic is in your tummy. So you have to take some leaves of sana, boil it with Quranic water and drink. That is going to flush out everything in your tummy and scrape it out. So even if someone does not know, and he's got tummy pain, and you tell him, oh, this is a remedy for tummy pains, and he takes it, and he does not know anything, it will still work. It will remove the magic from his tummy. Now, if you go in the house and we remove the jinns, so if people believe or not believe, it will still go. And I had once a patient, a lady, and she had plenty of problems, and all her problems left. And when she came back, I said, okay, it's finished. She said, I'm not sure to believe that this is really magic. And I said, well, I did my work, your problems have gone, you paid me my wage, so alhamdulillah, I've finished now. You believe or don't believe, but your problems are over, alhamdulillah, so you can get on with your life. Mm-hmm. So even if someone does not believe, it will still work.
And does it differ from person to person in terms of how many sessions need to be performed, or is it really just a once-off?
No, it depends. It depends mainly of the problem you have, how bad that problem is. So, for example, superficial problems are blockages in life, and then you have mental situations of anger and depression, and then you have physical situations of illnesses. Then it can become worse to losing one's control and going to schizophrenia and madness. Sometimes the physical problems are very bad, like psoriasis, and need more time. So it just depends on the problem, how intense the problem you have, also on the person. So of course, if the person is making effort with deen, with Quran, and keeping away from sins, and if he's got a strong character, that will all help.
If you have a medical condition, let's assume it's a dreaded disease, and you go for ruqya, let's assume you're still going for medical treatment as well. Do you believe that one should continue your medical treatment and continue the ruqya sessions as well?
Yes. Actually, the ruqya work starts where medical stops. Where doctors say we can't understand, we can't help for this thing, or they're just giving you some medicine just to keep it down, to keep it stable, to avoid it worsening. That's when we start. And we will never tell someone to stop a medical treatment. For example, if someone has got schizophrenia, like crazy, so we'll treat him to remove the jinns and magic, but no, we will not take the chance to remove because he can become violent or suicidal or something. So no, we tell him to carry on his treatment. When he feels better, he'll tell his doctor that he's feeling better and he's sleeping better and everything, and the doctor will reduce, inshallah, the treatment until one day he'll say, okay, you're free now, your problem is over.
What about people who use going to a ruqya practitioner like yourself as a cop-out? So everything's wrong in my life due to all of the bad and poor decisions and choices I've made. And then I say, oh, I can't come right in life. I can't find a job. People don't like me. Nobody wants to marry me, etc., etc., etc. I think somebody has made jadoo on me, and I come to you for healing. But the situation I'm in is due to the fact that I don't want to help myself. I'm lazy, I don't go and look for work. I'm unsociable, so I blame the whole world that they don't like me. People hate me, people don't want to be with me. You know, such situations, or people are jealous of me, so that is why they've cursed me, and that's why my life is in such a mess.
Well, actually, concerning ourselves, if someone has nothing of jinn and magic, we'll tell him that he has nothing and we can't help him by ruqya. And but mostly
Are
people...
you able to pick it up immediately? Are you able to pick up, if you look at me and I come to you for help, would you be able to tell me there's no jinn or no magic? Your problems are of your own making.
It's not by just looking at you. So we have an interview to ask for symptoms. So if the symptoms you talk about do not match, for example, couples. So if you say, my wife is always shouting at me, but you are cheating on her, or you are beating her, or you're coming late, or doing things like that. So we say, of course, how can you expect her to be happy? Now, if the problem's happening without any reason, and you're doing everything and problems are still there, that's when we know it's not normal. Mostly there's a part of both. You see, people are a victim of magic, but for example, in a couple, if they love each other and they are very humble and very open-minded, so if magic is done, that will make small problems. But if they are arrogant and selfish, and that's when magic is done, it will completely split up. You see, so the effect of magic also depends on the character and the practice of the person. And of course, someone who's reading a lot of Quran and invested in deen, that will reduce its effect. Yet it will still have, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also was affected, but it will reduce. So when there is a part of magic and jinn, we will treat. And when we see that there's also a problem of behavior. For example, we treated someone and his business was not getting right, and so we asked, is he doing any haram? He says, yes, his business is based on riba. So how can you expect Allah Ta'ala to help you when you are doing what Allah calls a war against Allah, which is the riba? So same thing if someone wants to get married, but in the meantime he's having girlfriends. So you want Allah Ta'ala to bless your life with nikah and halal, yet you're going through haram. How can the haram way bring you to the halal end? So we will give advice of people on all these issues also.
And finally, you've been on tour, you've been throughout the country. What are you finding as far as South African Muslims are concerned? And what about non-Muslims? Would you treat them as well?
We do treat non-Muslims. We We don't have a problem treating non-Muslims, except those who worship shaitan. That is what I tell them. If I had a Christian patient yesterday, and that's and we don't have problem treating unless if someone worships shaitan. So we cannot remove the shaitan from him because he's asking for the shaitan himself. So apart from that, we can treat them, alhamdulillah. And Sahaba treated non-Muslims, idol worshippers, by Quran, and they healed. And this is a means of da'wah also for them, so they see the benefit of Quran and of Islam. What was the other question?
What are you finding in the rest of South Africa?
Yes. So what was most interesting, so we are treating people, we are training people everywhere, we are giving awareness in mosques, and this is a very new subject to most people, and subhanAllah, especially when we say that the first solution is to treat yourself, people are shocked because they never heard such words. It has always been kept secret, kept mysterious. So, but the most important thing is our programs with ulama. So we have been meeting ulama everywhere, having collective programs, sometimes meeting ulamas individually, telling, and also in Dar Ulooms, and meeting the students and the headmasters. So this is the most important achievement, bring this knowledge to the ulama so that they understand and they accept this, and that of course is opening the door to the society. And you are preparing a report on everything we have seen that are wrong practices, to give it also to the ulama so they will also state on it to make things become correct.
Inshallah, and shukran very much for coming to heal us here in South Africa. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your efforts. And I certainly will be talking to the people at the Ruqya centers throughout the country. Shukran once again. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That was Sheikh Ben Halima. We do hope he's made a huge dua for us here at ITV Studios, and of course to all our viewers, to make dua that inshallah whatever, nazm or nafs or whatever it is that has been cast on us gets obviously rid of by the dua that he makes for all of us, inshallah. Still to come on the show, we're going to talk to Rayana Edwards about Sari for Change. And our final interview for the morning is with Rayana Edwards. She hails from the Western Cape but has now settled in the Golden City. She's here to talk about Sari for Change, and also she has a Facebook page called Cape Malays. Fascinating stuff. Let's hear what is she all about. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Who is Rayana Edwards? Why did she decide to relocate from the Western Cape and make Johannesburg her home?
Well, me being in the Western Cape has been a long time ago, because before Johannesburg, I've been here for 12 years. I lived in Nairobi, Kenya,
Oh, wow.
and that was for 10 years.
Okay.
So I've really been out of Cape Town for a long, long time, and my yearning is always to go back. But this
It's
is
still
where
home.
It's still home.
I
It lives
presume
in my
you-
heart.
You visit there very regularly.
Not as often as what I would like to, but
Right.
it's in my heart, and I think right now it's about rekindling that yearning, and we do it in different ways.
Of course. Now, you've started something called Sari for Change, and I understand from people that, mutual friends, that it's making a huge impact on people's lives. And when we talk Sari for Change, we're talking about that 6-meter cloth, if it is still 6 meters,
Correct.
that Indian women drape around their bodies and use it as their daily clothing, their clothing or their covering. Why saris, and why did you decide to go this route?
Okay, as we all know, the world is changing. Values and cultures are changing, and with that, the sari is not as popular as what it used to be.
True.
So if we look at the predominantly Hindu culture, where in very many of their sects, they would wear the sari as a daily wear. Bring it back into South Africa, the communities are pretty scattered, and also it means that there's been a shift for comfort and practicality. And so the saris that was worn daily are now being worn for special occasions, which means that there's a huge surplus of fabric, all of those 6 meters. And as we all know, it is so luxurious, colorful, beautifully embellished. So I saw an opportunity in trying to track those saris, because where are they going? You go to any grandmother's homes, they've preserved those saris for years, and they hope to then pass it down to their daughters and their granddaughters. But the reality is, do the daughters want to wear them? Do the granddaughters find a use for it? And that was the gap that we then tapped into.
But by the same token, you can say that about possibly the African culture. So wherever you go in Africa, the traditional dress code or the traditional dress is also, for the very same reasons, is also changing, and people are going the westernized route.
Correct. But at the end of the day, with the African culture, there's still elements of it being upheld. With the saris, it's really a matter of the practical aspect. If you look at a day in a life of a professional, they're moving around, they're commuting. Is it really practical to wear a sari in today's times? That's the question. With African attire, if we just look at our West African sisters, there's comfort, there's breathable cloth that they use. So on that, if you have to do a comparison, I do feel that it's still very prevalent, even if it's elements that is picked up with the African attire.
So you then came up with this idea and thought, well, the material, the 6 meters of cloth can be repurposed. possibly create employment, and I'm going to leave you to tell me the story. But how much of research did it take you to get to the point where you are today?
The research was really through practical experiences. I traveled the world. I was very fortunate in my career. I've always been involved in the fashion industry. And so hopping onto a plane to go and source manufacture and fabric was the easy part. But coming back and you realize, where is the skills in South Africa? We need to hone in on that. Why can I not make this a local story? And then, of course, knowing that the fabric was your biggest resource, your expense, and adding to that was the skill, because not everybody could work with the fabric. And so when I stopped importing garments and tried to look at localizing it, it did prove to be a huge problem. There wasn't enough skill. As we all know, the actual manufacturing industry has taken a huge blow because of the Chinese products and lots of imports from cheaper imports, I would say. Going back to my Western Cape heritage, I come from a factory workers.
Absolutely.
Rex Reform, I don't know if you
Right.
recall, was one of the biggest factory textile industries.
And employed the majority of the community,
Absolutely.
both our fathers and our mothers.
And so that's my history. And 5 years ago, when my grandmom passed on, I mean, I grew up with a sewing machine in the background. So they would work in the factory in the day and they would still take on private work. And that's how they managed to send us to school and take
Absolutely.
care. And when she passed on, I felt that she passed that message on to me. And she said, you know, Rihanna, in her silence, do something about this.
Can I just digress a bit here? Let's look at the Western Cape, and we know that the garment industry was a huge employment creator back in the day. What has replaced that since we've got all these cheap Chinese imports flooding our markets?
Well, that's the issue. The creative and textile industry, as it's now categorized as, is very scattered.
Diminishing, I should imagine.
Scattered because so many factories have had to close down. It's not been sustainable. It's been captured completely by Chinese imports. That has been the worst. And it's been over a 10-year period, and I do feel that there's not been a lot of improvements to revitalize this industry. With the result, we lack skill. We definitely lack skill, at least in Gauteng. In the Western Cape region, it's very much alive, but also in smaller pockets.
Right.
But with the insurgence of the whole new creative industry in the Salt River, Woodstock area, this is being revived.
And I think historically and obviously up to the current time, Cape Townians were known to be the best tailors in the land and the best creative designers and dressmakers. When you spoke about someone coming out of the Western Cape, or you went down for a holiday and had something made there, you kind of appreciated and you looked at that piece of it. It's a work of art. You looked at it in awe and appreciated the talent that went into producing that dress or suit or whatever the case may be. And it would be sad if that art dies out.
Sadly. And so this has been my replacement almost.
Okay.
When I started with the Sorry for Change project, it was about realizing that there's a lack of skill and that there aren't enough projects to really bring women together that have the talent.
So you needed to bring women together, you needed to upskill them, you needed to make certain that it was financially viable. How did you tackle all of that?
First of all, using upcycled fabric like the saris, going around into areas that were really, you'd find grandmothers sitting on machines on the corners in the townships. Let's dignify that. Okay, can we, it was about bringing them into a space and saying, here's an unemployed designer, here's an entrepreneur, let's put them into a think tank. And that's how I started this fashion incubation.
How long ago was that?
5 years ago.
And up to now, approximately how many garments have you produced, and where do you market the garments?
Sure, I can't tell you how many. It's been hundreds and hundreds.
Right.
It's mainly online. I have partaken in quite a few markets. Our highlight so far has been partaking in Torino Fashion Week in Italy, where the Islamic IFDC, Islamic Foundation in Europe, recognized the project as a sustainable project, and we then exhibited at Torino Fashion Week.
And I presume it's modest wear.
Under the modest wear,
Alhamdulillah,
yes. We actually worked with a designer from Sweden. Her brand is called Sacred, and the full production took place in Johannesburg. Torino Fashion Week, she won a prize for Best Newcomer Designer in the Sustainable Fashion Wear, and that was a really good breakthrough for us.
I hope you've sent in pictures and slides.
I've sent you a video.
Wonderful. Yeah. So that obviously is playing out as we speak. So the upskilling, working with this type of fabric, how many people? You started 5 years ago. Do you still have the same team of people? Where do you operate from? And people watching us this morning, aspiring young designers, fashionistas, etc., who don't have a space to express their art, do you have room for them?
So 5 years ago, and from where we are now, it looks completely different. As we know, the process of creating garments that are consistent and of a high quality, especially for the European market, was a huge challenge for us. We started the project with 8 people initially. We allowed it to run for 2 years, and we still were not sustainable enough. It's really hard to get funding, and I went knocking on a few doors, managed to get some funding from GEP, Gauteng Economic Propellers, and that was how I could launch my first fashion incubation. Thereafter, we brought in a business model together with the training aspect, so it's a bit of both at the moment. Women have come through this project. They don't stay, because that's the idea.
Okay.
You know, the idea is for them to get the skills that they need so that they can either become more employable or they start their own brand.
And that's where we leave it. We're going to come back in a minute or two to talk some more about this amazing concept. Rihanna Edwards from the Western Cape, while she left there 12 or more years ago, is now residing in Johannesburg, and she has a initiative called Sorry for Change, but she's also started a Facebook page called Cape Malays, and we're going to uncover all of that a little later on in the program. Welcome back. I'm talking to the lovely Rihanna Edwards. She has launched an initiative 5 years ago called Sorry for Change, and it's ongoing. And she also has a page which she calls Cape Malays. We're going to hear what that is all about. But she also tells me off air that she's a life coach. My goodness me, what else is there to this amazing woman?
Well, I think whichever project I engage with, it's important that I bring through my life coaching learnings. And ultimately, whatever we do, it's about how we perceive it, what is our state of being, and that's how I use my life coaching. You know, it's in the projects, it's in the work that we do, it's sitting here and being able to share my story to inspire.
MashaAllah. Back to Sorry for Change, you suggested that people join you for a little while and you upskill them, and then they can go off and make a name for themselves in the world. Either start up their own little businesses, or do whatever is going to serve them best with the skills they've learned through Sorry for Change. Have you ever had anyone that's kind of stuck with you over the past 5 years because they believe that they want to still be under your wing?
No. No.
How long do they stay with you typically?
The longest designer, Letabo, stayed with me for 2 years, and she then moved on to, she got married, she's staying in Durban, and she's now working for Mr. Price at the head office as a trends analyst. So she's done really well, and we still keep in touch, and she's always talking about how her experience has really groomed her for what she's doing today.
Any other success stories from the people that have come through your, you know?
Yes, Phoebe stays in Cosmos City, and she started her own boutique in Cosmos City where she combines African wear with the saris. She's also started another business in upholstering, soft furnishings. So she's
Is that also something that you taught her?
Well, it was the skills of stitching, and they have their own creativity, and that's really what I promote within the incubation and training. I would like for people to really hone in on what resonates for them, and we just then tweak it and improve on it so it can become a product that we can scale into new markets.
So you've had someone that stayed with you for 2 years. What is the minimum required period for them to be with you to upskill, and does it cost them anything to be with you?
9 months is the incubation, the time to really nurture a baby, I'd say. But yes, because then they would not just get the upskilling in terms of product production and garment making, but also the coaching aspect, and that we focus on mind shift. Being an entrepreneur is quite daunting in today's time, so it's building that muscle so that they can deal best with the challenges that will come their way. We do have master classes so that they can improve and continually upskill. But I'd say 9 months is a good time. Thereafter, it's really looking at the practical aspect and how they run their business. A lot of them don't make it because, as we know, you need resources and prior investment, which we're not always able to assist with. But at least to be able to get them ready to construct their own business plan so that they can go to organizations and apply for a loan.
So that 9-month period, what's it going to cost? Someone that's out of work, someone who's never picked up a needle in their lives and believe that here's an opportunity. I may not be creative, but I can learn the skill. I'm sure you can learn the skill and maybe just make something out of my life.
Well, right now, what we do is we try and get that person sponsored so that there's no cost to them.
Okay.
So it's about raising sponsorships on a monthly basis for that learner.
Wonderful. And you keep them on for about 9 months.
Yeah.
Can you teach someone who's not very creative, someone who's never, as I've just said, picked up a needle in their lives, can they come to you and are you able to upskill them?
I'd rather not. I would prefer for them to have some understanding of working a machine. Then it will take a lot more than 9 months.
Right.
For me, it's easier to have somebody that has had some kind of training, even if it was informal, but to start from the very scratch, it takes a lot more resources.
And I should imagine also a love for the art.
That's so important.
Because
we need passionate people.
Absolutely.
We need for them to have a desire to want to improve on what they already started somewhere along the line. So we've been fortunate that we do get a lot of fashion designers that just didn't make it, or needed to have some of the business skills injected into their creativity, because that's really where the value lies.
For people who are wanting more information, is there a website address they can visit?
They can visit my Facebook page, Sorry for Change, and we normally have regular updates on where the classes are, whatever's happening around the project, where sales markets are happening. So I would suggest they go to the Facebook page.
Cape Malays, I'm absolutely fascinated. What started this? I looked at it and I thought to myself, is this a platform for people who've left the Western Cape and they're in all parts of the country or possibly in all parts of the world, and this is a way of them reconnecting? Or is it about profiling amazing people that come out of the Western Cape?
It's a bit of both. We are scattered as a community, and so like I said to you earlier on in the interview, I lived in Nairobi, Kenya for 10 years, and I birthed 4 daughters at the time. Coming back to South Africa, the question was, where is our community? What language does Cape Malay speak? and I couldn't answer my kids. So I was driven by their curiosity and wanting to understand what is the common factor? Without them having to visit Cape Town, how do we really capture our heritage?
And how did you do that? I'm fascinated to hear it.
So I've had 2 Cape Malay markets where I invited traders to come out. We brought in some minstrels, Cape minstrels.
Wow.
We had various events and activities at the actual market, because I do believe we are a community that loves food and song and dance and just coming together. And
And making the connection, the 6 degrees of separation.
Socializing.
Who's connected to whom?
Oh yes, very much so. And that was also very confusing for my kids. Like, how does the next question we always hear is, I know you. Are you the son or daughter of so and so? Exactly that. So the Cape Malay markets turned out to be very successful. But yet I found that there was a lack of commitment and conviction from the actual on the entrepreneurial side. And I really thought that would be the connection, and I realized that perhaps we're not ready for that as yet.
How different are, so you pushing the Cape Malay agenda, because obviously it's close to your heart, but the local Malay community, the Muslim Malay community in Gauteng, how different are they in outlook? I mean, I'm not talking foundation, I'm not talking about Islam, the religion, but just as far as a people is concerned, are they very different and distant to the Cape Malays?
I think everybody's got a story. Okay, and we, as living in Gauteng, we've never really had the opportunity to connect and share sameness. Okay, it was always about the differences and the complaints and the negativity. And for me, I wanted to just bring in a whole different perspective and turn it around to say, but we have so much to celebrate. We have so much of positivity coming out of this community. We are capable of so much more. My question is, and my drive behind this page is, how do we take collectively, how do we enjoy a percentage share of the economy? And that is the challenge I put in front of the community.
And I should imagine the recognition, because you come with a rich history. It doesn't matter where in the country you as a Malay is residing, but you have such a rich history. If you just go back and map your history, you have amazing stories to tell about life, about the community, and about your own progress, I should imagine, because we as a community, Indians, Malays, Muslims, Christians, as a black community, were disadvantaged for hundreds of years.
Absolutely.
And now we have an opportunity to shine, and I have no doubt in my mind that you have some amazing Cape Malay stories on your page.
I've interviewed the most amazing women and men, telling their stories from a totally different perspective, because I do think that there are a lot of platforms out there already highlighting the heritage and the culture, because that's what you think of when you think of Cape Malay. I'm really trying to focus on the creativity, which you also mentioned, that leads to economic power. Because then we are a community that can really celebrate something other than the culture and the history and the heritage.
But you have to continue celebrating that. With 2 minutes to wrap up time, how do you source these people? Where do you find them?
I think it's just people around us. Your show, you're learning to get to know so many people. It's what I do. I love wanting to understand, what is your story? Because it's in the storytelling that we can affect social change.
Absolutely. And I know this is an unfair question. In recent times, who is the figure or the personality that truly stands out for you, whose story appeared on your page and you believe should be shared with the world? And that's a tough question.
Yes. On my page right now, I have a brand that is called Tulua Rising. I've written a story about one of the founders, and why I love her story is she's decided that she wanted more for herself. She's a successful entrepreneur in the events and hospitality industry. She started off selling kusistas, and people would queue at her store on a Sunday for kusistas. And she said she wanted to be known for much more.
Than just the kusista selling.
Exactly. And so she decided, and she was overweight and she felt unhealthy. She's lost 15 kilos. She's worked on herself mentally, physically, emotionally, and she is shining. And for me, she's a success story in our community because she stayed in the community. Her store and her business is based in Florida, in Johannesburg, but she is servicing other communities. So there's a beautiful cross-pollination that's taking place, because I always feel, again, going back to it economically, we're known for the most amazing kusistas, but you only have to go into our areas to go and buy that kusista. Why is it not available at Woolworths or Pick and Pay? And do you know?
And I think Cape Malays are more than just the divine kusistas they make, and that's where we have to leave it. No doubt I'm going to be visiting your page and tap into all of those amazing women and men to come and tell their stories right here on ITV. Shukran so much for being with us on the show this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
What an amazing woman, and just look at how she's touched lives in such a positive way. I look forward to those future interviews. And it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you for being with us on the show this morning. As always, please take care on the roads. A big thank you from the Let's Talk production team. And as always, it is Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.
قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حني قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا